After 60, the gut you are living with is not the same organ it was at 40. Most women feel this, the bloating that was never there before, digestion that takes longer, a heaviness after meals that used to pass in an hour. What almost nobody explains is the actual mechanism behind that shift. When estrogen drops at menopause, it does not only affect bones and mood, it dismantles a specific colony of gut bacteria, researchers call it the estrobolome, that existed partly to regulate how the entire microbial community behaves. When those bacteria decline, transit time slows, the mucus layer that coats and protects the gut lining thins, and quiet, sourceless inflammation rises. Most standard digestive advice was never built for this specific shift, because most of that advice came from research done on younger bodies or male bodies, and the gap between that research and the female gut over 60 is wide. These 9 plants were not invented to close it, but they work directly on the exact mechanisms that change most after menopause. Bile flow, the gut lining, the bacteria that feed muscle and immunity, and the motility that determines how long waste sits before it leaves. Here is what each one actually does. The first one most women use incorrectly, even when they use it. Ginger activates a self-cleaning cycle your gut runs between meals, not a metaphor, a literal sweeping mechanism called the migrating motor complex. Think of it as a slow wave that moves from your stomach to the end of the small intestine, the way a street sweeper clears a road at 3 in the morning, clearing leftover food, excess bacteria, and debris that built up during the meal before. This wave only fires during fasting windows. Chronic snacking shuts it down completely, every time. In 2008, researchers published in Alimentary Pharmacology and Therapeutics that gingerols and shogaols, the active compounds in ginger, directly stimulate this wave. The key is timing. A teaspoon of fresh ginger or a strong cup of ginger tea between meals, not with food, gives the gut the signal it needs to sweep. Taken with a meal, it does something different. Taken in a fasting window, it becomes the trigger the gut was already waiting for. The reason bloating after 60 hits differently is not just slower digestion. It is a coordination failure in the gut's own muscle layer. The gut is lined with smooth muscle that contracts in waves to push food forward. After estrogen drops, those contractions lose their timing. The muscle tightens in some places while stalling in others, trapping gas in pockets that build pressure rather than releasing. Fennel seeds contain anethole, a compound that acts as a smooth muscle relaxant specifically along the intestinal wall. It does not slow the gut down. It releases the spasm so the trapped gas can finally move through. Half a teaspoon of fennel seeds chewed after meals. Chewed, not steeped in tea. So the essential oil releases in the mouth and begins working immediately. Reduces post-meal bloating in clinical comparisons to placebo within 20 to 30 minutes. The mechanism is not absorption, it is release. But release only handles part of the problem. What happens when fat enters a gut that has run low on its own detergent is a different failure entirely. There is a reason women over 60 lose fat-soluble vitamins even when their diet looks right, and it lives in the bile. Think of bile as the gut's natural detergent, produced in the liver, stored in the gallbladder, released when fat enters the small intestine to break it apart so it can actually be absorbed. After 60, bile flow often slows. Fat moves through incompletely digested. The vitamins bound to it leave unabsorbed, and the gut ferments what should have been processed cleanly. Artichoke leaf contains cynurin, a compound that stimulates both bile production in the liver and its release from the gallbladder. Germany's Commission E, the government body that evaluates herbal medicines the way the FDA evaluates drugs, approved artichoke leaf extract specifically for digestive complaints tied to insufficient bile. 1 to 2 grams of the leaf extract before a fatty meal restores the detergent the gut was missing. Fat digestion, fat-soluble vitamin absorption, and transit time all follow, but none of it reaches its potential if the bacteria downstream have already been displaced. Dandelion does 2 things at once. and most people know only one. The root is prebiotic. It contains inulin, a fiber that passes through the stomach and small intestine completely intact and arrives in the colon as direct food for bifidobacteria specifically. Think of bifidobacteria as the keystone species of the postmenopausal gut, the organisms that anchor the whole community. When they are fed and strong, they crowd out the bacteria that produce excess gas and systemic inflammation. The root feeds them directly, but the leaves do what the root cannot. They contain bitter compounds called taraxacins that stimulate bile flow through a different pathway from artichoke, acting directly on liver cells. Root in the morning, leaf tea before dinner, and the plant works on the microbial layer and the bile layer at the same time. It grows in most gardens and is pulled out as a weed. The parallel to how women's gut health has been handled by the medical mainstream is not subtle. This is actually the gap that Strong Past the Drop was built to address. I kept watching women over 50 do everything right with their protein and still lose muscle, and the mechanism almost always traced back to gut absorption, not the food itself. The protocol includes the meal structure that supports gut function alongside the strength signal, because eating the right amount of protein through a gut that cannot absorb it is like pouring water into a cracked glass. It is on screen if you want it, but 5 plants remain, and 4 of them work on the lining itself, the part that produces no symptoms until the damage has already been building for years. There is a reason gut lining damage shows no obvious warning until the problem has gone deep. The lining has no pain receptors the way muscle does. The gut lining is not a wall. It is a single layer of cells held together by tight junctions. Picture a tiled floor where the grout between tiles is what keeps everything sealed. After menopause, those junctions loosen, the grout weakens. Particles that should stay inside the gut cross into the bloodstream and trigger immune responses that register as fatigue, joint discomfort, and low-grade inflammation with no traceable source. Slippery elm works on this at the most literal level. When slippery elm bark powder contacts water in the gut, it becomes a thick, slick gel, a mucilage that coats the gut wall the way a cast protects a fracture while it heals underneath. It does not seal the junctions directly. It creates a physical layer over them while the lining repairs itself. Half a teaspoon in warm water before meals sits against the gut wall for hours. The relief most women describe is not dramatic. It is the feeling of something that was constantly exposed finally being left alone. But slippery elm covers the lower stretch. It leaves the upper tract without protection. Marshmallow root produces the same type of mucilage as slippery elm, with one important difference. Its coating begins higher, in the esophagus and stomach, where slippery elm does not fully reach. Think of the 2 plants as covering different sections of the same long road. Slippery elm handles the lower stretch. Marshmallow root handles the top. Used together, they coat the full length from the esophagus to the colon, not with a supplement, with a physical protective layer that gives the tissue underneath the environment it needs to repair. For women who have chronic acid irritation alongside gut symptoms, marshmallow root is the piece that was being left exposed. But a physical barrier is still passive. The gut can also be restored to produce its own protection again, and that is a different mechanism entirely. Not all aloe is the same, and the difference between its 2 forms is the difference between healing the gut and harming it. The aloe latex, the yellow layer just beneath the outer skin, is a harsh stimulant laxative that should not be used regularly by anyone. The inner clear gel is an entirely different compound. It contains atemonin, a long-chain polysaccharide that acts as a prebiotic, feeding specific beneficial bacteria in the colon, while simultaneously reducing the inflammatory signals that degrade the gut wall. A 2014 trial in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences found that aloe vera inner gel reduced gut inflammation and symptoms significantly more than placebo over 8 weeks. 2 tablespoons of cold processed inner gel in the morning, verified free of latex, works on both the microbial community and the inflammatory signal that is driving the damage. But feeding bacteria and quieting inflammation cannot rebuild what has already structurally broken down. That requires something more specific. Most people use turmeric for inflammation without knowing that its most specific gut action is structural. It does not just reduce what damages the lining, it rebuilds the lining itself. Curcumin, the active compound, increases the expression of the proteins that form the tight junctions, literally restoring the grout that loosened after menopause. Research published in Nutrients in 2017 documented this effect directly. The absorption barrier is real. Curcumin is poorly absorbed on its own. Piperine, the compound in black pepper, increases its bioavailability by up to 2,000%. A quarter teaspoon of turmeric with a pinch of black pepper in warm water daily gives the gut the material to rebuild what the hormonal shift dismantled. Without the pepper, most of it leaves the body before it reaches the gut wall. And even with the junctions rebuilt from the inside, the surface layer in front of them, the gut's own first line of defense, still needs to be restored from a different direction. The last plant on this list works on the layer that exists before any other defense, the mucus the gut produces itself. Think of it as the lining's front door, a slick protective film that bacteria and irritants have to penetrate before they reach the actual cell layer. The gut is supposed to produce this film continuously. After years of gut stress, estrogen decline, and disrupted signaling, that production drops. Deglycyrrhizinated licorice, DGL, the form with the blood pressure-raising compound removed, contains flavonoids that signal the gut to produce more of its own mucus, not coat it from outside, but restore the mechanism that generates its own protection. A 300 to 400 milligram DGL tablet chewed before meals, chewed, not swallowed, so the compounds release in the upper tract first, returns to the gut something it was supposed to be making all along. The gut after 60 is not a declining system. It is a system that received a different signal when estrogen changed and reorganized around that new instruction. Every one of these 9 plants works on a named mechanism, not a vague idea of cleansing, but a specific biological process that estrogen once regulated and no longer does. The gut you are living in responded to what changed. It will respond to what you change next. What you do with this on Monday morning is the only variable still open. You now understand what actually changed in the gut after 60 and why most generic digestive advice was built for a different body at a different hormonal stage. The gap between understanding the mechanism and building a daily practice that works with it is what Strong Past the Drop was made to close. I built it after watching too many women understand exactly what was happening in the gut, in the muscle, in the strength signal that estrogen used to carry, and still not know what to actually eat, how long to walk, or how to structure the kind of movement that sends the body a message it can act on. It is 8 weeks. Food structure built around protein the gut can actually absorb, a walking protocol that is short enough to do and specific enough to matter, and leg strength work that sends the one signal post-menopausal muscle still responds to. The meals begin with gut function because none of the rest works if absorption is broken. It costs something because building it at that level of specificity took real time. The link is on screen.